There's a quiet pressure many men carry. It doesn't sound aggressive. It doesn't yell. It shows up in small comments. You should get out more. You're always home. Don't be boring. Come on, live a little. And after hearing that enough times, something begins to form inside. A question: what's wrong with me? Why don't I want what everyone else seems to want? Why does going out drain me? Why does home feel, better? Tonight, I want to slow this down. Because for some men, the desire to stay home is not laziness. It's not avoidance. It's not social failure. It's something much more psychological. It might be regulation, and that changes everything. Let's start with the nervous system. We live in a world that is constantly loud. Notifications, crowds, conversations layered over music, layered over expectation, other people's moods, other people's reactions. For some men, especially men who grew up needing to scan the room, who had to read tone shifts quickly, who learned early that safety depended on awareness. The outside world doesn't just feel stimulating, it feels like vigilance. If you feel relief the moment you walk through your front door, that doesn't mean you're antisocial. It means your nervous system has been working all day. Some men aren't drained by people because they dislike people. They're drained because they're tracking everything. Tone shifts, facial expressions, emotional temperature, who's upset, who's pretending, who might explode by the time they get home. Their body isn't bored, it's full. Home becomes the first place they can exhale without performing. That's not weakness. That's regulation. And the man who understands what calms his nervous system is not behind in life. He's self-aware. For some men, home is the first place the body stops bracing. No scanning, no adjusting posture, no managing impressions, just quiet. And when you've spent years adapting to environments that felt unpredictable, that quiet feels earned. You're not hiding, you're unwinding. There's a difference. Now let's talk about energy. There's a common misunderstanding about men who prefer solitude. They're labeled shy, detached, unmotivated, but introversion is not the same as insecurity. It simply means you recharge differently. Some men gain energy by being around people. Others expend energy around people and regain it alone. If you're the kind of man who notices everything, who senses mood shifts before words are spoken, your brain is constantly processing. You're not just in conversations, you're absorbing them. You're not just at gatherings, you're interpreting them. By the time you leave, you're not socially defeated, you're neurologically full. And going home isn't retreat, it's refueling. There is something emotionally intelligent about recognizing when you need stillness instead of stimulation. Not all rest is avoidance. Sometimes rest is wisdom. Let me tell you about a man I once worked with. We'll call him Daniel. Daniel was successful, disciplined, reliable, but every weekend he canceled plans. He told himself he just wasn't that social. Privately, he worried something was off. One day, we explored what actually happened when he went out. He described walking into a room and instantly calculating who feels confident, who feels insecure, who seems annoyed, who might challenge him. He didn't realize he was doing it. It was automatic. He grew up in a house where emotional shifts meant danger, so his brain learned to monitor. At home, alone, his body stopped monitoring. He could finally be. Daniel wasn't antisocial. He was exhausted. There's a difference. Now let's go deeper. For some men, home isn't just quiet. It's control. If you grew up in chaos, if you walked on eggshells, if you had to become the stable one early, then home might be the first space that feels fully yours. You choose the lighting, the music, the pace, who enters, who doesn't. For a man who never felt fully autonomous as a child, that matters more than he realizes. Home becomes the first place he doesn't have to adapt. And that sense of control can feel stabilizing. For some men, it's the first time their nervous system experiences consistency. And consistency feels like safety. Safety feels like strength. But here's where we need to stay honest, because what protects you can also limit you. Home can be regulation, but it can also become insulation. There's a quiet question every man has to ask himself. Am I resting because I need to restore? Or am I staying small because I'm afraid to be seen? Both can look the same from the outside. One is nourishment, and the other is fear. And the only way to tell the difference is internal honesty. You can protect your peace and still stretch your edges. You can value solitude and still practice visibility. Growth doesn't require chaos, but it does require courage. This is where emotional maturity comes in. The goal isn't to force yourself into social situations to prove you're normal. The goal is to understand your pattern. Are you in a season of restoration, or are you avoiding vulnerability? Because sometimes, after years of overstimulation, your system genuinely needs quiet. And sometimes after years of self-protection, your system is afraid of exposure. Those are not the same. One is healing, the other is hiding. And men often confuse the two. If this conversation resonates, I'd invite you to pause here for a moment, not to change anything, just to notice. Notice what happens in your body when you imagine going out. Is it fatigue or is it fear? That distinction matters. And if this kind of grounded, male-focused reflection helps you slow down and understand yourself better, consider staying connected to the channel. We explore these patterns calmly, without hype, just clarity. Now, let's continue. There's another layer to this. Some of the most creative, driven, self-aware men are homebodies. Not because they lack ambition, but because solitude gives them access to their inner world. When you're not trying to match everyone else's pace, you begin hearing your own. You begin asking, what do I actually want? What feels aligned? What drains me? What nourishes me? And that kind of self-inquiry is not laziness. It's psychological maturity. You're not missing out just because you're not everywhere. And sometimes stepping back from the noise is how you finally hear yourself. A man who constantly chases stimulation rarely knows his own rhythm. But the man who can sit in stillness without panic, without distraction, begins to understand himself. Solitude isn't the absence of life. It's space for integration. And integration is what builds real confidence. Not performance, not volume, not presence. Integration. Let's talk about confidence for a moment. There's a version of confidence that's loud, outward, performative. And then there's the quieter version, the man who knows what his body needs, who knows when he's full, who knows when he's pushing too far. That man may not dominate the room, but he doesn't abandon himself either. And that is strength. Confidence is not constant exposure. Sometimes confidence is restraint. Sometimes it's discernment. Sometimes it's saying, I'm staying in tonight, not to avoid life, but to sustain it. Still, I want to challenge you gently, because safety can become identity. If you never stretch, you don't grow. And growth doesn't mean becoming extroverted. It means becoming honest. Maybe this week you try one small exposure, one conversation, one event, not to perform, not to prove, but to practice. Then you return home, you decompress, you reflect. That's balanced living, not extremes. You can love solitude and still build a meaningful life. You can protect your peace and still pursue expansion. The goal isn't to choose between safety and growth. It's to build safety inside yourself, so growth doesn't feel threatening. When your nervous system feels anchored, the world stops feeling like an assault. And when the world stops feeling like an assault, you don't need to escape it. You engage with it intentionally. That's the shift from avoidance to authorship. So here's the grounding question I want you to carry forward. Not, what should I be doing? Not, what does everyone else expect? But, what does my nervous system need right now? Is it restoration or is it expansion? Ask that consistently, and your life begins to align around reality instead of pressure. And here's the truth many men never hear. You are not defective for craving calm. You are not behind because you value stillness. You are not weak because crowds drain you. You might simply be wired for depth. And depth requires quiet. As we close, I want to leave you with this. There's nothing wrong with building a life that matches your nervous system. The world doesn't need more exhausted men pretending to be energized. It needs men who understand themselves, men who can regulate, reflect, choose intentionally. That's maturity. If this conversation helped you see your patterns differently, take that awareness with you. And if you want more grounded conversations like this, calm, male focused, psychologically honest, you're welcome to stay connected. Because growth isn't about becoming louder, it's about becoming clearer. And clarity begins when you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, what do I actually need? That's where strength starts.